Captain Lena Ivanova gazed out the observation window of the avant-garde spacecraft as it approached the lush green world of Pandora. After 6 long years in cryogenic suspension, traveling 4.3 light-years from Earth to the Alpha Centauri system, they had finally arrived. Anticipation and trepidation warred within her. This was the most important mission of her life, making first contact with an alien species. It had all started 9 months ago with the signal. SETI observatories had picked up a repeating broadcast coming from the direction of Alpha Centauri, the tantalizing indication of an intelligent civilization. The message was simple: a series of prime numbers and mathematical constants, along with what appeared to be a greeting and invitation to visit their world. Pandora, the second planet from Alpha Centauri b. It set off a frenzy of activity on Earth. The discovery shocked and electrified humanity. After decades of searching the cosmos, here was proof we were not alone in the universe. A species capable of transmitting a signal detectable across interstellar distances must be highly technologically advanced. The prospect of what we could learn from them filled scientists with wonder and excitement. Political and religious leaders were more apprehensive. Some feared the aliens could pose an existential threat, that their intentions were not benevolent. Others believed it was hubris and folly for humanity to journey out to meet them, that we were not meant to meddle with forces beyond our world and understanding. Debate raged across the globe about how to respond. In the end, curiosity and the spirit of exploration won out. The decision was made to send an expedition to Pandora to investigate and attempt to open a dialogue with its inhabitants. An international crew was hastily assembled. The best and brightest minds Earth had to offer: scientists, diplomats, linguists, cultural experts. Captain Ivanova, a decorated cosmonaut and veteran of long-duration spaceflight, was chosen to lead the mission. And so the avant-garde had launched toward Alpha Centauri, carrying the hopes and fears of all mankind. For 6 years, the crew slept as their vessel hurtled across the vast gulfs of interstellar space. Now, they had arrived at last at the blue-green jewel of Pandora, shining like a beacon under the light of its binary stars. As Lena watched, a swarm of alien spacecraft rose up from the planet to greet them, small dart-shaped vehicles that moved with impossible speed and agility. She felt her heart begin to race. There was no going back now. Everything was about to change. The leader, Xyloth, stood atop the observatory tower, his large orange eyes tracking the descending bulk of the alien starship through the crystal dome overhead. The human craft was an ugly, ungainly thing to his eye, all harsh angles and utilitarian design, so different from the sinuous organic curves of Pandoran architecture. But still, he regarded their arrival with excitement and wonder. Xyloth was the prime elder of the Neyathi, the race that inhabited Pandora, a position of great authority and responsibility. Tall and dignified, he cut an impressive figure in his shimmering silver-white robes, his blue mottled skin and swept-back cranial ridges marking him as a member of the scholarly caste. It was Xyloth who had advocated sending the signal to Earth, despite the objections of many of his people. The Neyathi were an ancient civilization, their recorded history stretching back over 100,000 rotations of Pandora around its twin suns. Over the millennia, they had achieved wonders, unlocking the secrets of science and mathematics, engineering marvels of technology, evolving their society into a peaceful, enlightened utopia in harmony with the natural world. But the Neyathi had also grown complacent in their superiority, Xyloth believed. They had abandoned space travel long ago, content to live quietly on Pandora. Cultural development had stagnated. In their isolation, his people risked decline, a slow fading of the curiosity and vitality that drives all sentient life. New ideas and perspectives were needed to keep their civilization vibrant. And so, when their long-range sensors had detected radio leakage from an emerging technological species on the third planet of the distant Sol system, Xyloth had become intrigued by the prospect of making contact. Humanity was like a brash, impetuous youngster in comparison to the Neyathi. What wonders and revelations might a meeting of such different minds produce? It had been difficult to convince his tradition-bound people of the wisdom of this course. Many feared that contact with an alien race could disrupt their way of life, perhaps even pose an existential threat to their civilization. In the end, Xyloth had prevailed through his force of will and persuasive arguments. The invitation had been sent, and now the humans had come, ready or not. As the alien vessel descended through wisps of cloud toward the landing platform, Xyloth whispered a silent prayer to the guiding spirits of his ancestors. "Let this be a new beginning for both our peoples," he thought, "and let me have the wisdom to forge a path of peace and understanding between our worlds." The fate of 2 civilizations would rest on the outcome of this first contact. Captain Ivanova stepped out of the airlock and onto the soil of an alien world, the first human to do so. She felt a thrill run through her like an electric current at the momentous nature of it. There was a breathable atmosphere and comfortable gravity, yet the environment was still shockingly foreign, as if every color was shifted just slightly into an unfamiliar hue. Looming in front of her was a soaring buttress structure of glittering crystal and swirling metal, like an Art Nouveau cathedral fused with intricate circuitry. A delegation of aliens waited at its base, eerily humanoid in form, but with striking differences: the towering height, the bluish-ridged skin, the large eyes that varied in shades of green, orange, and purple. Lena's heart pounded as she approached them, keenly aware of the historic import of this moment. The alien in the center, clad in ornate robes, raised a slender four-fingered hand in greeting. "Welcome to Pandora, people of Earth," he said, his voice a resonant, musical baritone. "I am Xyloth, Prime Elder of the Neyathi. We are honored by your presence." Lena blinked in surprise that he was speaking English, before realizing he must have some form of translation technology. She raised her own hand in response, hoping the gesture would translate. "I'm Captain Ivanova of the Avant-Garde. The honor is ours. On behalf of all humanity, thank you for your invitation. We come in peace, in the spirit of friendship and mutual understanding between our worlds." She looked around at the stunningly beautiful alien landscape, at the elegant forms and dancing lights of the city soaring in the distance. Humanity had so many questions for the Neyathi about their culture, their history, their technology, and scientific knowledge. She hoped this was the beginning of an exchange of ideas that would transform and uplift both civilizations. But even as the thought formed, Lena felt an inward twinge of concern. The Neyathi seemed wise and enlightened, their society impossibly advanced. But how would they view us? Humanity must seem so primitive and unsophisticated in comparison, perhaps even dangerous in our volatility. There was still so much conflict and suffering on Earth. What if the Neyathi judged us unworthy of their engagement, or saw us as a threat to be contained? She thought of the attitudes of fear and distrust toward the aliens held by so many back home. The protests, the angry rhetoric, the threats of violence. How would the Neyathi react to humanity's baser instincts? The vast cultural gulf between their species yawned before her. "I must tread carefully," Lena told herself. The future relationship between our worlds could hinge on these early interactions and the trust we build, or the misunderstandings we sow. She met Xyloth's enigmatic orange gaze, wondering what he saw when he looked at her, what his true intentions for inviting them here were. "Please, come with me," the alien leader said with a gracious gesture. "There is much for us to discuss." He led the human delegation toward the base of the crystal tower. Lena steeled herself, knowing that whatever revelations awaited them inside, the course of history would be forever altered. The conflict. Xyloth paced through the arched halls of the academy, the Neyathi center of learning and diplomacy, his brow furrowed in consternation. Only a few cycles had passed since the humans had arrived, yet already their presence was proving disruptive. Individually, Xyloth found the human scientists and ambassadors to be earnest and likable. He had enjoyed his discussions with Captain Ivanova, her keen intellect and thirst for knowledge. But as a group, they were frustratingly chaotic, prone to squabbling amongst themselves over the most trivial matters. Their cultural differences were jarringly apparent. The Neyathi were orderly and reserved, with a deep reverence for tradition. They lived in harmony with nature, taking only what they needed. The humans, by contrast, were materialistic and impatient, always pushing for more, faster. They meddled with technologies beyond their maturity. Xyloth could see the human tendencies starting to influence some of the younger Neyathi, lured by the novelty and dynamism of these newcomers. There had been a spate of disruptive pranks and rebelliousness at the academy. His fellow elders were growing concerned, questioning the wisdom of his decision to invite the humans here. Some of the human delegation were also stirring up trouble. A few had begun openly proselytizing their political and religious beliefs. One had been caught trying to sneak advanced Neyathi technology back to the Avant-Garde to be reverse-engineered. Xyloth had been forced to place the craft under guard. Worse was the human soldiers. A small contingent had been included for security, battle-hardened veterans of Earth's conflicts. Xyloth could sense their paranoia and xenophobic tendencies. They viewed the Neyathi with distrust, fingering their weapons when in their presence. One of the soldiers, a Sergeant Griggs, had gotten drunk on Neyathi liquor and started a brawl, raving that the blue freaks couldn't be trusted. That humanity needed to seize the aliens' technology by force if they wouldn't share, to gain military superiority. It had been a deeply unsettling incident. Xyloth had brought the matter to Captain Ivanova's attention. Though shocked and conciliatory, Xyloth could sense that the unrest was weighing heavily on her too, stretching her ability to hold the delegation together. He shook his head sadly, knowing that bridging the gap between two such disparate cultures and mindsets was a monumental undertaking. Was it a fool's errand from the start? Would humanity prove too irrational and warlike to engage with? Should he listen to his advisors and send them away before their presence polluted Neyathi civilization? Xyloth stopped to gaze out over a stunning view of Pandora's jungles and found his resolve hardening. No, now more than ever, their two species must find common ground and rise above their base instincts. The consequences of failure were too dire to contemplate. He would redouble his efforts to guide the humans toward a path of wisdom and restraint. The future of both their worlds could depend on it. The revelation. Lena entered the Neyathi temple, feeling a mix of awe and apprehension. Xyloth had requested this private meeting, and she feared what it could portend. Relations between the human delegation and their alien hosts had become strained, mistrust and resentments building on both sides. Many of the Neyathi seemed to view them with growing suspicion and disapproval. For all their enlightenment, Lena could sense a growing insularity and xenophobia from the aliens as well. She found Xyloth kneeling before a swirling holographic fractal pattern hovering above a marble dais, chanting softly in his musical language. Though she couldn't understand the words, Lena found it hauntingly beautiful and stood transfixed until he finished his meditations and rose to greet her. "Thank you for coming," Captain Xyloth said, his eyes unreadable. "I fear our two peoples have reached an impasse. Integrating our cultures and building mutual trust is proving more difficult than I imagined." Lena nodded somberly. "On that we agree. I had hoped this would be an opportunity for both our civilizations to grow and learn from each other, to lift each other up. Instead, we seem to be bringing out the worst in one another." Xyloth regarded her sadly. "I have seen signs that the Neyathi as well are not as evolved as I had believed. That we have stagnated in our isolation and grown rigid in our thinking. Some would have me cut off all contact with your species, return to our bubble." He shook his head. "But I believe that would be a mistake. That only through engagement and the free exchange of ideas can we continue to progress." Lena felt a rush of relief. "I'm so glad you feel that way. I still believe humanity and the Neyathi can forge a bond of friendship and cooperation. That we have much to teach each other." Xyloth held up a slender blue hand. "I agree. But I have come to realize that the gulf between us cannot be bridged through diplomacy and discourse alone. That something more is needed to truly unify our peoples." He beckoned her toward the holographic display. "What I am about to show you, only a handful of Neyathi have ever seen. It is our civilization's most closely guarded secret, the key to our technological prowess and spiritual harmony." Lena leaned forward in fascination as Xyloth manipulated the controls. The swirling pattern resolved into what looked like a star map, with one system pulsing brighter than the others. "Over 1,000 generations ago, we Neyathi were a young race much like your own. Bickering and divided, despoiling our world through greed and short-sightedness. But then we discovered a signal from the cosmos, far older than our civilization. It drew us to this star system, where we found an ancient alien installation left by a long-vanished race. What we learned there transformed us, elevated us into our higher form. The image blurred and reformed into a pulsing, intricate spherical structure made of some crystalline technology. It looked like a massive, interlocking puzzle of geometric facets shot through with glowing conduits." Lena realized she was looking at an artificial megastructure around the star that dwarfed anything the Neyathi or humans had built. "We call it the catalyst," Xyloth intoned reverently. "An archive left behind by the progenitors, containing the sum total of their knowledge and wisdom compiled over millions of years." Lena struggled to wrap her mind around the concept. A hyper-advanced race that predated the Neyathi, passing on the secrets of the universe. "That's incredible," she breathed. "What happened to them?" "We do not know," Xyloth said. "There is no record of why they departed or where they went, but their gift to us, to all younger races, is beyond value." He held Lena's gaze, and she could see the fervor in his luminous orange eyes. "This is what I propose. That we bring representatives of humanity to the catalyst. Let you experience communion with the ancient archive itself, to absorb its higher wisdom and knowledge. It will transform you as a people, as it did us, uniting our civilizations in understanding." Lena's mind raced. It was an astonishing revelation, an opportunity beyond imagining. But something in her hesitated. To expose humanity to such an advanced alien intelligence, to allow it to reshape them. It felt almost like a violation, a loss of their agency as a species. "A culture. I don't know," she said. "We have to make our own way, find our own path, even if it's difficult. I'm not sure we're ready for something like that. Without the guidance of the catalyst, It took my people thousands of years to evolve beyond our primitive discord Xyloth pressed. In that time, we nearly destroyed ourselves, as humanity risks now. I am offering you a chance for a quantum leap in your development, to inherit the wisdom of the ages. Lena bit her lip, torn. The Neyathi believed this archive had made them enlightened. But she could also see the seeds of stagnation and conformity the doctrine of the catalyst had instilled, the hesitancy to deviate from its ancient texts, the very flaws that had driven them to seek outside contact. Did she have the right to make such a monumental decision on behalf of her entire species to shape the future of human civilization for centuries to come? The thought was terrifying in its implications. But the alternative, returning to Earth empty-handed, the rift between humanity and their first alien contact growing, perhaps irreparable. That could be catastrophic as well. Xyloth extended a hand to her, his eyes pleading. What say you, Captain Ivanova? Will you take my offer to your people? Will you join us in embracing a higher realm of existence? Lena closed her eyes, placing her hand in his, the moment seeming to stretch for eternity. She could only pray that the choice she was about to make was the right one for humanity's future. The decision. The debate raged for hours in the avant-garde's meeting room. The human delegation divided over Xyloth's proposal. Some, like the wide-eyed young physicist Dr. Sanjay Gupta, were eager to access the wonders of the alien archive, insisting it could advance human science and technology by centuries. This is the opportunity of a lifetime, Gupta exclaimed, jabbing a finger at the hologram of the catalyst megastructure floating over the conference table. The accumulated knowledge of an ancient civilization far more advanced than our own or the Neyathi. It could give us the keys to unlimited clean energy, quantum computing, warp drives. We'd be fools to turn it down. Others, like the dour diplomat Heinrich Bauer, were more cautious, even hawkish in their distrust of the Neyathi's intentions. Or it could be a trap, Bauer growled, his eyes narrowed. A ploy to subsume our culture, our very identity as a species, to their doctrine. To make us dependent on their technology and ideology. We must protect our sovereignty, our freedom to determine our own path. Sergeant Griggs pounded a meaty fist on the table in agreement. His jaw clenched. I don't like it. This whole setup stinks. How do we know this catalyst is what they say? What if it's some kind of mind control machine? Or a weapon? We'd be giving the blue bastards power over us. The sergeant's right, the severe-looking biologist Dr. Helena Nowak chimed in. The Neyathi claimed this archive uplifted them. But look at their society, it's rigid and stagnant, mired in ancient dogma. I think the catalyst suppresses development as much as it advances it. Do we want an outside force dictating human culture, even with benign intentions? The ship's counselor, an unflappable Buddhist named Taun Gian, interjected calmly. All growth requires change, and change is always painful. The caterpillar must dissolve in the chrysalis to emerge as a butterfly. Perhaps the catalyst is an opportunity for humanity to transcend our lower instincts, our tribal quarrels. Is that not a worthy aspiration? Lena listened to the arguments, her temples throbbing, the weight of the decision heavy on her shoulders. The risks and potential downsides of exposing humanity to such a transformative alien influence were apparent. It could alter the very nature of what it meant to be human in ways impossible to predict. Their culture, their identities, could be irrevocably changed, perhaps even erased. And yet, the dream of unlocking a higher potential in the human species was alluring. Humanity had been locked in the same cycles of conflict, prejudice, and self-destruction for millennia. The same flaws that had the Neyathi viewing them with trepidation. Perhaps an outside intervention, a repository of enlightened wisdom, was what they needed to break free of those patterns, to evolve. Lena thought of what she had seen of Neyathi society, for all its faults. Their harmony with nature, their wisdom and erudition, the graciousness and patience of Xyloth, even in the face of trying diplomatic strains. If humanity could gain even a fraction of those qualities, wasn't it worth the risk? She took a deep breath and stood, all eyes in the room turning to her. I've made my decision, Lena said quietly. We will accept Xyloth's offer. A small delegation will accompany the Neyathi to the catalyst, to access the archive. Griggs started to protest, but Lena silenced him with a sharp look. I do not make this choice lightly. The consequences for humanity's future could be profound and unpredictable. But I have to believe that any civilization advanced enough to create such a repository did so with benevolent intentions, that they would not offer this gift if they did not deem us ready. She met each of their gazes in turn. We stand on the threshold of a new era for our species, the next phase of human evolution. We must find the courage and the vision to step through that door, even if we cannot see clearly what lies on the other side. Lena felt a frisson of fear and awe at the decision she had made. The Rubicon had been crossed, the die cast. Come what may, humanity would be forever altered by the events about to unfold. She could only hope that her choice would be remembered as a wise one, and not a tragic mistake. The communion. The journey to the catalyst was strange and dreamlike. Lena found herself aboard a Neyathi starcruiser, all fluid lines and shimmering fields, so alien from the utilitarian bulk of human ships. Her small delegation Gupta, Nguyen, and a few others huddled close, dwarfed by the towering blue forms of their hosts. Xyloth guided them into a domed chamber, filled with shimmering mist, the curved walls patterned with swirling fractal designs. "This is a communion chamber," he intoned. "It will allow you to interface directly with the catalyst." He directed them to recline on couches that seemed to mold to their body shapes, the material warm and yielding. Lena felt a flicker of anxiety as Xyloth affixed a delicate headset over her temple, the metal cool against her skin. "Relax your mind," the Neyathi leader said softly. "Open yourself to the ancient wisdom. Let it flow through you." He touched a control, and Lena gasped as her consciousness exploded outward, her perceptions expanding beyond the confines of her physical senses. It was like her mind had been uploaded into an inconceivably vast computer network, an ocean of pure information. She was no longer aware of her body or the chamber. Her essence floated in a boundless datascape, a kaleidoscope of icons, images and equations representing the sum total of the Progenitors' knowledge. It was like staring into the mind of God. The archive opened up to her like an infinitely complex puzzle box, configurations of thought and symbols self-organizing into meaning. She saw the inner workings of stars, the fundamental forces of the universe weaving together in an intricate dance. The delicate balance of ecosystems, the rise and fall of civilizations across the Milky Way over aeons. He touched a control, and Lena gasped as her consciousness exploded outward, her perceptions expanding beyond the confines of her physical senses. It was like her mind had been uploaded into an inconceivably vast computer network, an ocean of pure information. She was no longer aware of her body or the chamber. Her essence floated in a boundless datascape, a kaleidoscope of icons, images and equations representing the sum total of the Progenitors' knowledge. It was like staring into the mind of God. The archive opened up to her like an infinitely complex puzzle box, configurations of thought and symbols self-organizing into meaning. She saw the inner workings of stars, the fundamental forces of the universe weaving together in an intricate dance. The delicate balance of ecosystems, the rise and fall of civilizations across the Milky Way over aeons. It was almost too much for her human brain to process, a fire hose of data and revelation threatening to overwhelm her mind. But gradually, she felt her consciousness begin to absorb the knowledge, to adapt and expand to hold it, like a strained muscle suddenly increasing in strength and flexibility. Concepts that once seemed opaque, the mathematics of 10-dimensional spacetime. The nature of consciousness became transparent, obvious. Lena felt her intelligence multiplying, her imagination blossoming with new possibilities. The petty concerns and limitations of her past self seemed to fall away, replaced by a crystalline understanding of the universe and humanity's potential place within it. She could sense the other minds of the delegation floating alongside her, equally overawed. But she could also feel the presence of other consciousnesses, ancient and alien, radiating a serene benevolence. The Progenitors themselves, or some echo of them, imbued within their creation, gently guiding the younger races who access their wisdom. As the gestalt reached fruition, Lena felt something within her shift, like a puzzle piece clicking into place, a new sense of purpose and understanding, as if the very DNA of her being had been rewritten, upgraded to a new operating system. She knew, with unshakable certainty, what humanity must do, how to break its cycles of conflict and self-destruction, and step forward into a better future. With a shuddering gasp, she felt her awareness return to her body, the physical world snapping back into focus. Xyloth was watching her with a knowing look, a hint of awe in his eyes. "Now you understand," he said softly. Lena sat up slowly, her mind still reeling with the immensity of what she had experienced. She could see her own wonder and revelation mirrored in the faces of Gupta, Nguyen and the others as they disentangled themselves from the interface. She understood now why Xyloth had offered them this knowledge, why the progenitors had left it behind. It was to uplift, to illuminate, to guide the younger races of the galaxy towards a higher form of existence, a state of unity and enlightenment. What the Neyathi called the Great Universal Harmony. Tears stinging her eyes, Lena turned to Xyloth. "Thank you," she whispered hoarsely. "I doubted the wisdom of this path, but now I see. Humanity will be forever changed by what we have learned here today. Our children's children will remember your act of generosity." Xyloth placed a slender hand on her shoulder, his touch gentle. "You are not the first to harbor doubts. Change is always frightening. But you have taken the first step on a glorious new path for your people, one that will lead humanity out of the darkness and into the light." He raised his voice to address the delegation. "The Neyathi will help you integrate this new awareness into your society, to share it with your people in a way they can understand and embrace. It will not be easy. There will be resistance, even violence from those mired in the old ways of thinking. But we will face those challenges together as friends and allies, united in our vision of a better galaxy." Lena nodded, a newfound resolve kindling in her heart. "Humanity is ready," she said firmly. "We have been stumbling in the dark for too long, trapped in our own limitations. But now we have seen the light of higher truth. We will find the strength and courage to lift our species up, to take our place among the enlightened civilizations of the cosmos." She exchanged a look of fierce joy and determination with her crewmates, feeling the unbreakable bond that had been forged between them in the crucible of the catalyst. They had been transformed, body and soul, reborn as the vanguard of a new era for humanity. The first of many who would make the journey to this font of transcendent knowledge. As the Neyathi ship turned for home, Lena gazed out at the stars with eyes that seemed to reach beyond the infinite. The future was bright and full of promise, an endless vista of potential waiting to be fulfilled. A chapter of human history had closed, and a new one, radiant with possibility, was about to begin. The new dawn. The blue-white crescent of Earth swelled in the viewport, and Lena felt her heart catch in her throat. The homeworld had never looked more beautiful to her eyes, or more fragile. From this vantage, she could see the scars of human civilization etched on its surface, the sprawling megacities, the deforested swaths of countryside, a biosphere pushed to the brink by the rapid technological advances of a species still mired in tribal instincts. But it didn't have to be that way. The gestalt of the catalyst hummed in Lena's mind, a constant presence since her return from Pandora. It had suffused her with an unshakable inner peace, an understanding of humanity's dysfunction, and a roadmap to correct it. She knew now, with absolute moral clarity, what her people must do to step into their higher potential. It would not be an easy road. Lena and her transformed crewmates, the Pandora witnesses the media had taken to calling them, had spent months crisscrossing Earth, meeting with world leaders and presenting their vision for a new way forward. A realignment of human behavior and priorities in accordance with the enlightened teachings of the progenitors. Xyloth and the other Neyathi ambassadors had accompanied them, offering the wonders of their advanced science and the credibility of an older stellar civilization as proof of concept. The vast majority had welcomed their message of unity and sustainable living, of elevating human consciousness beyond its fractious impulses. Millions were undergoing the Catalyst interface in Neyathi communion centers, their minds expanded in ways that fundamentally reshaped their worldviews. But there was also fear and resistance from certain quarters. Some saw the paradigm shift as a surrender of human sovereignty, even a form of alien mind control. Reactionary forces, doomsday cults, xenophobic nationalists, plutocratic elites clinging to the status quo had violently opposed the one-world prosperity accord proposed by Lena and the Neyathi, decrying it as an attack on traditional human values. There had even been terror strikes against the communion centers by the most rabid elements. The casualties weighed heavily on Lena, but she could not let doubt creep in. The progenitors had chosen this path for them. Humanity must walk it, through whatever trials lay ahead. Its soul depended on it. As the ship descended through layers of clouds, a gleaming structure loomed on the horizon, the soaring crystalline dome of the newly constructed Terran High Chancery, nexus of the burgeoning Human-Neyathi alliance, a symbol of the new era dawning. Xyloth stood beside Lena in the observation deck, a pensive look on his regal features. "Remember, Captain, transformation is always painful for those too conditioned to see its necessity, the thorns that snag us when we reach for the rose. But your people are shedding the last of their lesser instincts, embracing a brighter nature, just as mine did so long ago." He rested a comforting hand on her shoulder. Under our guidance, Earth will become a paradise, one in harmony with itself and the cosmos. And when you are ready, you will help us carry the teachings of the progenitors to other young races still groping in the dark. Until the whole galaxy is united in enlightenment and purpose, as it was meant to be. Lena's eyes shone fiercely as she watched the Chancery draw closer. For so long, she had felt like an outsider in her own society, a dreamer constrained by the smallness and brutality of the world into which she'd been born. But now, the catalyst's truth burned through her like an all-consuming flame of gnosis that could never be extinguished. At last, her life had meaning and direction. A sacred duty to bring her species into alignment with their cosmic destiny. No more war, greed, or senseless destruction, only a transcendent oneness, a universal melody she could finally hear. Whatever sacrifices lay ahead would be as dust against the radiance of that vision. As the ship settled on the landing pad, Lena saw an honor guard of human and Neyathi troops snap to attention in perfect synchronicity, a microcosm of the new order being born. In that moment, she knew with absolute conviction that this path was ordained. The Pandora witnesses would devote themselves utterly to guiding humanity across the existential threshold that yawned before it, shepherding their kind out of the waning night of its ignorance and to the brilliant new dawn of a galactic awakening. The future was upon them. May posterity be the judge, the crucible. Lena stood at the precipice, gazing out over the seething ocean of humanity that stretched to the horizon. A million faces turned toward her, etched with fervor and anticipation, waiting for her to speak the words that would define an epoch. 5 years had passed since that fateful first contact on Pandora, years of upheaval, transformation, and searing change. Under the guidance of the Neyathi, Earth had remade itself in ways both wondrous and terrifying. The old order had crumbled, swept away by the revelation of a higher cosmic truth. In its place, a new paradigm had crystallized, one based on unity, sustainability, and the elevation of consciousness. No more did humanity cling to its provincial tribalisms, its belief in the primacy of the individual. The teachings of the catalyst permeated every facet of life, bonding the species together in pursuit of a common goal, the establishment of a galactic civilization founded on the enlightened principles of the progenitors. Lena herself had become a figure of almost religious reverence, the prophet of the awakening, the emissary of the Neyathi. She who had first brought the catalyst's truth to Earth, shattering the veil of its ignorance. An entire generation had come of age knowing nothing but the creed she espoused. And yet, for all the utopian promise of this new era, Lena could feel the shadows gathering at the edges of her vision. This great leap forward for her species had not come without cost. The transition had been wrenching, at times horrifically violent. Millions had perished in the upheavals, the die-hard counter-revolutionaries, those unwilling or unable to accept the new ethos. Even now, pockets of bitter resistance remained, the unreconstructed, they were called. Those who clung to the old ways of greed, conflict, and selfish individuality. They waged a guerrilla war from hidden strongholds, decrying the witnesses as puppets of an alien agenda. Lena's nights were haunted by the memory of cities burning, of detainment camps overflowing with those who rejected the catalyst's message. But such qualms were luxuries she could ill afford. Not when they stood on the brink of a still greater precipice. The Neyathi had decreed that humanity was ready to undergo the final initiation to join them as an uplifted race, in total union with the galactic community. An irrevocable merger of civilizations, a dissolution of the boundaries between human and other. All that remained was for Lena, as the bridge between worlds, to give the command, to commit her species, wholly and eternally, to the grand design of the progenitors. The weight of that responsibility pressed upon her like a physical force, threatening to crush her. She felt a presence at her shoulders, Xyloth, resplendent in his gold-trimmed raiment of office, his face a mask of paternal pride and encouragement. No longer just an ally, but a father figure, a spiritual guide, the one to whom she had entrusted humanity's destiny. "It is time, Lena," he intoned softly. "You have led your people to the very threshold of their ascension. The hour of unification is at hand. Let them hear your wisdom. Show them the path to the light." Lena closed her eyes, feeling the expectant energies of the crowd thrumming through her like a current. In her mind's eye, the vast archives of the catalyst lay open, an infinite roadmap to a glorious future. All the barriers that had constrained human potential swept away like rotted husks before the winds of change. a species reborn in a crucible of alien knowledge, ready to take its rightful place among the enlightened races of the galaxy. She thought of the little girl she had once been, so very long ago, staring up at the stars, yearning to touch the infinite. How small and ignorant that child now seemed. How limited her vision of humanity's purpose. But through the Neyathi, through the revelations of the Progenitors, a universe of meaning had been bestowed upon them. A pattern vast and ineffable, of which they were all part. To reject that would be to reject life itself. To turn away from providence, to retreat into the empty gratifications of an existence cut off from cosmic truth. She could no more do so than she could carve out her own heart. The path lay open before them, shining and inexorable. She could only lead her people forward, into the unknown, trusting in the ancient wisdom to guide them. Lena opened her eyes, facing the sea of upturned faces. Her voice rang out, echoing from 1,000 speakers, resonating in 1 billion watching minds. People of Earth, children of soul, the time of our ascension is at hand, the merger. The great evacuation had taken over a month. A steady stream of ships rising from Earth to converge on the vast Neyathi mothership in orbit. A veritable Trojan horse, some whispered, ferrying an entire civilization to its demise. But they were the doubters, the naysayers, powerless beneath the tide of witness orthodoxy. Lena watched from the viewport as the last transports lifted off, filing into cavernous hangar bays like silvery minnows vanishing into the maw of a leviathan. The Earth hung below, achingly beautiful in its blue and white majesty. An empty jewel, abandoned by its children for the promise of a higher calling among the stars. Only a small contingent would remain behind, tasked with maintaining the now silent cities and stewarding the planet's ravaged ecosystems back to health. The rest would begin the long pilgrimage to humanity's new home, a vast orbital arcology around the Neyathi sun, a gleaming hive where the two races would merge their cultures and biologies in total synthesis. It was a momentous step, one that could never be undone. There could be no separate human civilization after this, no autonomous identity or destiny. Only the dissolution of self into a greater whole, a unitary consciousness guided by the eternal dictates of the Progenitors. They were not just voyaging to an alien star, they were voyaging beyond the very notion of humanity itself. Xyloth stood beside Lena, his eyes glinting with anticipation. "Do not fear this passage," he murmured. "You are the bridge between worlds, Lena. The alchemist that will fuse our civilizations into a new form, transcendent and undying. Through you, the human race will be reborn purified of its flaws, augmented by our strengths. A perfect union of flesh and philosophy." Lena knew the process that awaited them, the nanogenetic modifications that would blur the lines between human and Neyathi physiology, the neural implants that would yoke their minds together in a vast gestalt awareness. Some called it a kind of benevolent assimilation, an enforced evolution into a higher mode of being. But in the darkest recesses of her psyche, a final flicker of doubt remained. A nagging intuition that in the very moment of their apparent ascension, something essential was being lost. Some core of identity, of agency, slipping away beneath the tidal pull of a vast and ineffable agenda. Was this truly humanity's destined role in the cosmos? To surrender its uniqueness, to become but a single cell in a larger organism? Or was something precious being sacrificed on the altar of an alien ideal, some essential spark of independence and dynamism that had carried their species to the stars? She thought of the resistance, still holding out in their dwindling enclaves. The unreconstructed, with their stubborn insistence on human primacy and self-determination. Were they merely primitive throwbacks, addicted to their own savagery and myopia? Or was some part of her secret heart still aligned with their struggle, even as her conscious mind recoiled from it? Lena shook her head, banishing the tremors of disloyalty. It was far too late for such equivocations. The die had been cast, the Rubicon crossed. She had bound humanity's fate to the Neyathi with an unbreakable covenant. To doubt the rightness of that course now would be the ultimate betrayal, a refutation of all she had striven for. The future was upon them, irresistible and immutable. All that remained was to embrace it, to surrender to the currents of destiny. She would be the vessel through which two races became one, a fusion of blood and belief, the seed of a new galactic civilization, a purpose far greater than any one mind could encompass. As the last transport docked and the mothership prepared for its long voyage, Lena felt a sense of irreversible finality settle over her. The chrysalis was sealing shut, the metamorphosis begun, Whatever emerged on the other side would not be entirely human, but it would be something more. Something eternal. She turned to Xyloth, meeting his orange eyes with a gaze of steel and starlight. "Let it begin," she declared solemnly. "We go now to meet the future, to forge a new chapter in the story of life itself. May posterity judge the rightness of our cause." The Neyathi leader inclined his head in assent, a paternal pride suffusing his features. "You have chosen well, Lena Ivanova. Yours will be the hand that guides humanity across the threshold of its ultimate fate. The Progenitors will smile upon this union." He raised his arms in a gesture of invocation, his voice booming through the ship's comm system and across the waiting world below. "Let the merger commence. Let the great work unfold. All praise to the catalyst and to the shining path it has set for us." A mighty cheer erupted from the assembled millions, a roar of exultation and dread, of sorrow and joy. On the planet beneath, a shudder seemed to pass through the abandoned cities and silent forests, as if the earth itself was keening for its departing children. An old era was passing away, a new age dawning. Lena stood tall against the avalanche of emotion, her gaze fixed on the stars beyond. Whatever the future held, she had made an irrevocable choice, one that would echo through the ages to come. The road ahead was cloaked in shadow and uncertainty, but it was the only road now, the road of destiny. Come what may, she would walk it to the end.